Welcome to another episode of Tales from a Professional Nerd. So this one's going to be a little bit different, mostly because you guys know I am a huge DC Comics fan, huge DCEU movie fan, huge DC everything fan, DC. Well, today it's technically going to be yesterday when you see this, or many moons later, depending on when you watch this video. But today for me is an unbelievable. It's a day we've been waiting for a very long time. It is the day that HBO Max is releasing the Zack Snyder's Justice League, also known as the Snyder Cut, which is not actually a director's cut. It's actually a full envisionment of what he wants to do with the franchise in an effort to kind of tie a bow on a project that was taken from him because of the unfortunate suicide of his daughter Autumn. Um, so, not going to get into all that. What I wanted to do is I wanted to go ahead and record the Week in Bryan before I do the actual viewing. I'm going to go ahead and do two viewings of the movie today. That's right, 8 hours worth of Justice League. I'm that pumped. Hopefully, it lives up to expectations. But I have to be honest. I'm a little. I've got a little trepidation. The Justice League, the Joss Whedon cut of Justice League left a very sour taste in a lot of people's mouths. I thought it was an adequate movie, not even remotely what we wanted as fans and as DC fans and as fans of what Snyder was putting together. And I think that it was a tragedy, not only a legitimate tragedy, the loss of his daughter's life, but also the fact that this new director came in and demanded that he wouldn't be able to touch it unless the studio gave him complete control and let him basically tear up the script, rewrite it, retone it, rescore it, completely new storyboards, the whole nine yards, and delivered a drastically different movie in tone and execution. And we all know that. We all saw that. And what we were given was a watered down, failed attempt at turning the Justice League into another MCU engine, because that's actually what Joss was attempting to do, was to lighten it up and turn it into a little more fun here and there, and even the CGI executions, with the ever infamous Henry Cavill's mustache, it just, it was a really botched attempt on behalf of the studio, on behalf of the director, and it left an awful hole in a lot of fans, and which is what created the hashtag release the Snyder Cut movement, all the way up to the point where there was skywriting, there were billboards, there was Times Square like building signs. I mean, it's huge movement that generated millions of dollars for suicide prevention. It was if you were even at all interested in seeing one of the most powerful fan based movements toward trying to set things right, and not in the Star Wars "we hate this character" sort of way. Like, literally, there are people in the industry, there are professionals in the industry that admit that the results of that situation were sour, and as things have become revealed later on, is that there was even bad blood on the state, or in the set, in the production area, between director and actors, and actors basically walked away from roles that they would say that they said, you know, I'd come back if Zack was back. And when he was given that opportunity, they did. In fact, they did come back. And that's what ended up creating this new envisionment of a complete and told story of what Zack wanted to do, with you know the lead in from Man of Steel to, you know, BVS. There's more to it with David Ayer's Suicide Squad, because things got changed along the way. Suicide Squad was supposed to have a different bad guy, different storyboard ending, to lead into uh, the Justice League that hopefully we're going to see, which is why there has started to become a, you know, release the Ayer cut of Suicide Squad, and depending on how today goes, and I'm sure the sales on HBO Max and DVD sales and all that stuff of Zack Snyder's Justice League, we'll see how the future how the future goes. You know, this is unprecedented where a fan based movement has made such a huge impact, and I do think, you know, whereas there's some people who are like, you know, whiny fans, I do think there's another aspect to this where it shows that a production company can admit that, you know, they're like, you know what, maybe there is a different way to do this. You know, there's a different, you know, maybe there's been director's cuts and things. You know, how many different versions of Blade Runner have there been? How many different versions of Dune have there been? You know, there's been reboots and there's been director's cuts and there's been, I think there's like 5 different versions of David Lynch's Dune, that I'm aware of. One of which is like a bazillion miles long. Um, this is effectively no different, other than the fact that we're going to pour a little more money, or in some cases a lot more money, into a project to make it the best that it can be. If we're going to release it, we're going to release it with all the bells and whistles. And I think that this shows the movie going industry, the movie creation industry, that there is nothing wrong, and possibly could be right, with, if something isn't what it should be, that there's nothing wrong with going back and being like, you know what, we've decided to do it with an alternate ending, or, you know, here's a new version with all the deleted scenes reshot and put back in. You know, we've been doing that with DVDs and Blu-rays for decades at this point. Well, at least a decade. This is just that kind of deal, but on a much grander, much larger scale. And in the case of this particular instance, this is a director who suffered a family tragedy, an unthinkable, unfeelable loss, and was forced personally to step away from a project with the hopes that the production company would, you know, continue with years worth of work. And instead, it was completely redone and completely altered and completely changed. And it would be like if I wrote 4/5 of a book or 3/5 of a book, and then got really sick or broke my hands or something, and I couldn't finish it, and I had to hand it off to somebody else. And the new author was like, all right, well, I'm going to take that 3/5, we're going to turn it into 1/5, and then I'm going to rewrite 4/5 and completely change, and I'm going to ignore everything that my predecessor has done, and do it my own way. Um, there's something to be said for, so there's something to be said for the sanctity of art, and the sanctity of a creator's will. And I get it. It is still, at the end of the day, it's owned by Warner Brothers, and they thought they were doing the right thing, and they chose later on to admit their mistakes and give this other thing a shot, and give HBO Max an opportunity to pour a bunch of money into the project and see what happens. So far, I can't see where there's a negative to this. Everybody makes money. The fans are happy. The Snyder Cut fans are happy. We get the cut that we want. Hopefully, still haven't seen it yet. Um, Snyder's happy because he gets to finally finish his he got to finish his dream, or at least continue his dream without without that anchor of Autumn's death on his conscience. In fact, actually can do it sort of in her honor. Hey, this is right now there's a hashtag going around for a hashtag for Autumn. If you see that, that's actually specifically for Autumn Snyder. That's basically saying, hey, we're part of this. We're watching. We're donating. We're doing whatever we can. Our feelings or money or attention or whatever. It's all going toward this this movement, this attempt to set something correct, set something right. So take that for what it's worth. I'm sorry, I tirade this, and I want to go get to watching the movie. But I'd say I was going to get the Week in Bryan done first, so that way when I get done watching the Zack Snyder's Justice League, and take my notes and soak it all in, and make my notes of what I want to talk about, then I'll come back here to the studio and shoot my actual review, because I didn't want to come in here and do exactly what I'm doing here and getting on tangents and talking about things and all that stuff. So I want to go ahead and do the Week in Bryan now, and then we'll do the actual we'll do a cut, and then we'll do the actual review of the movie itself. So Week in Bryan. Let's see. I got to play D&D a couple times. Played family D&D again for the first time in a long time, which was so much fun. I love running D&D for my family. Not only because they are new, like the kids, they've never played before, and I don't get to run that much for Natalie or David, but it's so neat. It was like the first time that their characters have been into a big city, and the Connor's ranger, or his Connor's fighter, is a hermit who lived out by himself because he's half drow. Didn't really like people very much. So like the first thing he did is that he got a room at the inn, and then immediately went and tucked himself in at the room and was like, all right, all the people can go away. And so he kind of just sort of gave up on part of the session early to ignore all of that. Just ignore people and be like, I'm done. The big cities are crazy. And then the other child, they went ahead and they play a tiefling rogue, with backgrounds in like magic academia, and wanted to set up basically like a busker's stand to do street magic. So rather than following the plot or finding out what's going on with the dead farmers or anything based on the actual like plot of the game, I got one hiding in a hotel, and the other one that's like, I'm gonna make some coin on the streets. I thought it was great, and it was a great session, and I cannot wait to run again. We're gonna run again in a couple of weeks. It was a lot of fun. I always love running for those guys. My wife does she's a Russian themed dragonborn, who comes into town and immediately is wants to sell off these witches, basically the like little gooey bottles and stuff. And we have this really cool. She has this really cool interaction with like the eldest member of the entire town, who's been here since the founding. And it's a lot of fun. So we got to do that. I got to play in the homebrew game where I am the cat monk, which we are getting to. We started to actually start to prep for. I think we're going to go after the big bad. We started learning how to deal with vampires. We bought some silver stuff, some stakes. I think we're gonna go after the big bad and hope for the best. And then I played Curse of Strahd last night, um, which for the first time in a long time, I feel like we're actually winning, for lack of a better term. I think we're actually um, making some headway, and like every fight we're not running away from, we're actually starting to win some of these battles. It was a long fight, though. I don't know if spoilers if you haven't played Curse of Strahd. Um, Fast forward a couple minutes, but there is a winery that apparently is being overrun by evil druids or whatever, and they it's surrounded by like 50, I don't know, there were so many little tokens on the map of these little twig things, twig blights or blight twigs or whatever. Basically little tiny Blair Witch stick things coming at you trying to poke you with their needle fingers. We blew through like 30 of them. I'm a Dragonborn paladin, and that blows fire, and so apparently they're weak to fire, which is fantastic. I just lined them up and was like, "Poof," and they all fell down. And we're fighting through this druid thing, but we play that game in short sessions because we play every other week. So we actually stopped in the middle of the combat to just kind of let the table of things. All right, let's take a breather. We'll come back in 2 weeks and finish this out because there were still like 20 of those little twig dudes left, and one of the druids got away, and so hopefully we're saving the wine. That's the whole point. Is we're there to save the wine in order to get the doors open on a town because they won't let us in unless we have the wine. You know how it is. It's D&D. A plus B equals E plus. So that's basically what I've been doing. Started playing some Hero Clicks with, or played more Hero Clicks with Khan. Um, we had to pause that game midway because he's got a bunch of school stuff going on this week. So early bedtimes, school stuff. Um, but in leading up to today's big movie event, I took an Apocalypse Force with Darkseid and Calabac and Mr. Miracle and a Parademon. And I think Connor has realized that you can't do the same trick over and over and over again and not have your opponents learn, because he keeps taking the same two guys and trying to do this like 1-2 combo thing, and you can't do that against some types of characters, and Mr. Miracle is one of those characters that has no trouble getting around problems. So got to play some of that. Played a lot of Sea of Thieves over the Xbox. Work's going great. Worked on a little Spycraft stuff, slugging away on the new Shadowrun novel, and Power Rangers / GI Joe / Transformers RPG. That team, everything's come together really great. It's just work is doing really well. I can't complain. Um, I've got some painting commissions still left to do. I had an old client contact me about a very large commission that he might want me to do soon. So I need to clean off. I need to get these couple of things done to clean that off and get that ready for some line up, get them all done style painting. But other than that, it's been solid. It's a good time to be the professional nerd, so to speak. All right, so I'm gonna let you go now. We're gonna have there'll be a little brief thing on the screen. I haven't picked it out. I'll figure it out during editing, and I'm sure it'll be something Justice League related. But there'll be something on the screen for a couple of seconds, and then when I get back, I will have watched the Zack Snyder's Justice League. Um, Definitely once, probably twice, and we will. I'll tell you what I think. I'll give you a full review. I cannot promise that it won't be at least a little biased, as that I'm a huge fan, but I'll try my best to give you the nerds review. So we'll see you in a couple seconds. All right, so I just got done watching the Zack Snyder's Justice League. I am no longer going to call it the Snyder Cut because that does not, um, it doesn't fall into the right scope, uh, because that would imply that the movie is a cut of someone else's work, or of what it's what's the movement started out as restore the Snyder, or give us release the Snyder cut, and it has turned into the Snyderverse at this point. It's This is a completely different movie. It shares a bunch of scenes, it shares a sentiment, but it is a totally different animal when it comes to scope and size and feel and character development and things that make sense. Um, let's go ahead and I'm gonna say, first off, I'm gonna apologize for whatever reason. My camera, I don't know if the sound is gonna sync up perfectly with my camera as it should, um, but there seems to be some kind of delay on my camera rig, and I don't know why that is. So I hope that doesn't make you too crazy. I just kind of look like I'm badly dubbed at this point. Either it'll catch up, or this whole time is going to be a little annoying, and I'm going to be super mad about this. But hopefully it catches up with us and everything works out in time. Um, okay, so I watched the movie twice today. Yeah, I know, 8 hours worth of the same movie. Um, the first time I watched it was just to basically take it in, just watch it. Put my phone away, ignore everything around me, just watch it. Me and my wife watched it and just basically just pull it in. And then when that was done, we had dinner. We talked about it a little bit, and then I got out my handy dandy notebook. Went ahead and let social media know to a certain degree that I've seen it and that I loved it. Because here's the deal, I did. Um, I'm seeing a lot of people on Facebook, and not even a lot of people, just a handful of people, that are the same people who went into the first one with, well, I hate Zack Snyder's movies, so I'm going to hate this. And I saw a lot of people that seemed hopeful, but had that backhanded hopefulness of, well, maybe let's see if he can save it, not realizing that it wasn't it was going to be a different animal. And then I see a whole lot of people that are just basically be like, ugh, why? Well, the reason is that this was an unbelievably wonderful rendition of the story that Zach wanted to tell. It really is. I know that it's different than the original storyboards that he had said. I know that it's different than the supposed leaked storyboards that Warner Brothers claimed were the Snyder's version of things, and why Joss had to change stuff. Um, Overall, I said I'm not going to talk a whole lot about the old movie, the theatrical cut, or the theatrical version of Justice League, mostly because this is superior in every way, in absolutely every way. Um, there are a few things. I'm going to go through my little notes. I'm going to give you just basically the ideas off the top of my head right now. But I'm going to go through my notes to because I gave myself some talking points to remind myself, oh hey, definitely talk about this. And there are a few things that I would have done differently. So while I don't think that it is hard for me to say that this is pr- I may have to watch it one or two more times. Yeah, that's right. Um, Before I say definitively, but I gotta say that I think this is probably my favorite comic book movie. I think this may have bumped Watchmen out as my favorite comic movie of all time. Because not only with the background of what it took to create this, but also just the sheer fact that it did get created, and the end result is so beautiful and so poetic, and the music is wonderful. Uh, I it is unbelievable that this was done, and it needs to be a testament to it needs to be a testament to Warner Video for letting it happen, and realizing that they made a mistake and letting Zack fix that mistake. It is a testament to HBO Max for having the forethought to be like, this is going to be one of our launch engines, and definitely a testament to Zack Snyder as a director and as a creator, because he took what most people had already kind of written off as a mediocre superhero movie, which is basically what the theatrical Justice League was, and salvaged the scenes or altered the scenes that were good for the overarching plot, changed a bunch of stuff to make it fit better, and then added just piles upon piles of amazing, amazing stuff. I will say two things right off the bat, for people who are watching this review and are like, "Man, Brian, you're biased." I am. There's no question. I'm a DC fanboy. I love the DCEU. I think Man of Steel is an amazing movie. I think BVS is an amazing movie and misunderstood by so many people. But I think that the DCEU has a couple of hiccups in it. And more often than not, that has to do with the fact that the studio has not allowed a cohesive team to form between the directors, between the writers. Patty Jenkins and Zach have tried. James Wan did a real good job of sticking to kind of an overall concept that he knew Zach was working with, which is why Aquaman fits so well in this version of things. The Shazam, and one would assume Black Adam and Shazam 2, as things progress, they fit in real well in a post Zack Snyder Zack Snyder's Justice League world. They could totally fit. You could see where there'd be a place where you can go, okay, this movie could go right here, and it would go right there just fine. But overall, there have been a few places where the studio has overstepped their bounds, and made changes that the directors didn't need, or made changes to fit changes in other movies, in the case of like Suicide Squad. But overall, I want to go ahead and just say, my bias aside, this movie is amazing. It's got a great overall. It has a great actual plot progression, and progression, climax, ending, and then the actual ending of the story itself, leaving it in a situation where you could walk away from this movie and go, man, that was beautiful, and just have it, and basically have it in your head that, okay, more could happen. Or you start, like some of us, you could say, man, I really want to see what the DCEU can do with this storyline. Find a way to tie in the movies that take place after Justice League, Suicide Squad 2, Aquaman, Shazam. Find a way to tie those in directly, and then make everyone compares it to Marvel, which they shouldn't. Personally, I'm on Scorsese's side in the fact that Marvel movies are great. They're popcorn movies. They're wonderful. There's a handful of them that are actually really deep and powerful, but for the most part, they are just fun, empty calorie movies. And they're fun. With a few exceptions, I really enjoy the Marvel movies. Like, don't get me wrong, I really do. But they're not, with a couple of exceptions, they're not deep, and they're not. They don't make you think. The Guardians of the Galaxy's movies, which are comedic relief in many places, are also some of the best written when it comes to emotional feelings that are legit. That actually pull at your heartstrings as a person. Winter Soldier is just a damn fine movie all around. Captain America: First Avenger is fantastic. But then there are a whole bunch of movies that are just cotton candy, empty calories, flavor for an hour and a half, where you go, okay, and then you move on. The DCEU generally does not have those types of movies. Suicide Squad ended up being one of those movies. It didn't need to be, but it turned out that way because the production company moved in and set it up that way. I think Shazam's got a ton of heart. I think Birds of Prey is actually a really solid flick that, unfortunately, gets a bad rap because it came out in that sort of nebulous time when people were like, "What's going on with the DCU?" And so there was a lot of kind of wishy-washy. But actually, it's a really solid movie. It's a good flick. We don't know anything about Suicide Squad 2 or just the Suicide Squad as James Gunn is calling it. Aquaman, I think, is a fantastic movie. Mostly because of my bias for Aquaman. We all know that, but also it's just a good story, especially if you follow it up with the stuff that was supposed to happen in Justice League, which, back to what we're talking about, did happen in this version. It's fantastic. A couple of things that I think people will, when they see it, especially if they stream it for the first time, it is in a weird ratio. Zack didn't do it in widescreen ratio, because apparently it's set up to be for IMAX or something along those lines, for an IMAX theater. I don't know the specifics. What I do know is that it only that whole like square ratio, non widescreen ratio, only bothered me for about 10 minutes. By the time, as soon as like things started moving in the story, and I started like getting into the actual movie itself and like paying attention to the details of the movie, I didn't notice what ratio it was in. It just, I didn't. It was one of those things where, unless you are really, really just going to focus on that and choose to just lock, tunnel vision your way into, God, this ratio is terrible, why would that happen? Then yeah, that's going to bother you. It did not bother me after I got used to it in a couple of seconds. It's no different than when we were little, for those of us who are old like me. It's no different for those of us that we were little when they started putting letterbox movies on regular TV. That looked super weird to us. It was like, whoa, what's going on with that? And then over time you ignored it. And then eventually TVs became letterbox sized, and now it's basically the opposite thing, is that you've got a letterbox style TV, a widescreen TV, and you're using the smaller kind of square box ratio. Again, didn't bother me. For a few minutes I was like, that's kind of weird. Why is that like that? And then I got so caught up into the movie that I just didn't care. Like I said, there are a couple of other things that came up in the movie that I think that I would have loved to see differently. Doesn't mean that they're bad. It just means that I would have liked to see it differently, or introduced differently, perhaps. But overall, I gotta say, the delivery on this movie, it delivers everything that they said it was going to. It has all of the feeling, all of the heart of the last film, without all of Joss's quips and one-liners and stupid, oh, I tripped and landed in Wonder Woman's cleavage. With all of that, that's gone. Any of the actual comedy came from legitimate comedic moments, most of which, honestly, came from a character who is written to be smart alecky and comedic. Unlike in the theatrical version, where you had Batman making jokes and Aquaman making jokes. Oh, I'm sitting on the lantern and sitting on the lasso, and suddenly I say things that I don't mean to say. Oh, I'm sitting on the lasso, which we all know when it's on you and you're telling, like, you're being ensorcelled. Sorry, there were just things in the theatrical cut that were there just for shits and giggles. And it was unnecessary, as shown by the way this movie came together. There were just as many cool moments. Some of the cool moments from the theatrical cut got bigger and better. Almost all of the action scenes were bigger, better, and I don't want to say more realistic, because it's superheroes. But I will say, like, there were more moments where I was like, oh, this movement, this action leads into this action, leads into this action, a flowing scene rather than a jarring moment from here to here to here. One of the other things that people, especially if you were the kind of people who, when someone says something on a Zack Snyder movie, one of the first things that they say is, oh, it's filled with slow-mo. Yeah, there is. There is going to be a lot of slow-mo shots. It is something that Zack does a lot. not just to show super speed, which happens quite a bit, but it's also a way for him to focus in on particularly action-filled moments that he wants you to see and he wants you to notice. Unlike if it was just everything at movement pace or everything at combat pace, then you'll end up having, you know, people complaining that, oh, I didn't get to see everything that happened in the combat; it was all a blur. And that's absolutely true. If everything was kind of jumbled together and you didn't get any of the cool big elements, you'd miss it. You'd miss those little things. And then someone would say, "Oh, do you remember that part where that thing happened?" And they go, "No, I missed that." Well, it's because it went by like that. In a Zack Snyder movie, if it's something big, if it's a big moment, he's probably going to slow down time, slow down like cinematic time to show that off, especially if it's going to have any kind of like artistic callback, any kind of like allegory attached to it. That's probably going to get slowed down. So if you don't like the mid-motion slow-mos that Zach does, that's probably going to be a problem you have with the movie, and that's just it is. That's something that you're going to have to deal with, or decide that okay, that's one of the reasons why I judge this movie lower than the other person does. But overall, I gotta say, the characters felt more like the characters that they should. Um, they didn't have any. There were no jarring personality changes. There wasn't any, massive upheavals of, from in one scene I'm talking about the world ending and everything is horrible, and then 2 minutes later I'm making jokes about ouch, oh, that hurt a lot. That's not there. These characters flow much much easier and much more fluidly as the story progresses. So review wise, there's no question I give it two big old thumbs up. I give it a big 10 out of 10. You know what? I'll say a 9.5 out of 10. I don't want to do 10 out of 10 because there are a couple of tiny things that I wish were different, and then the other thing that's keeping me from giving it that 10th, that popping that 9.5 to a 10, giving it that top rating, is because we are now left in limbo. We are left as fans of this movie, of the DCU. We are left hoping that it moves forward, that we see more of this story, we see more of these versions of these characters, we find a way for these other movies, these movies that are coming out in the future, to have the interconnectivity, the connectivity, the connective tissues to make it part of this version of the story rather than Joss's version, because the theatrical cut version is so mediocre and so slappy and so out of place and disjointed that to not connect everything back to this however you can, whether it's Warner Brothers and DC going ahead and giving David Ayer a bunch of money to make the Ayer cut of Suicide Squad so it fits the way it's supposed to, or giving giving Ben Affleck back his Batman script so he can make the movie he wanted to make. That was a patchwork follow up to Justice League, or whether or not Zack ever gets his ability to make Justice League 2 and 3. Whatever we see here, whatever the future is, that's the reason why I can't give this 10 out of 10, is because it's such an amazing movie. Leaves us definitely wanting more, leaves us definitely feeling like this is the way the DCU should push forward, but we don't know if it can, or if it will, or if Warner will let it, or if DC will let it, or if Jeff Johns will allow it, or God, can we please bring Ray Fisher back for more Cyborg? Because man, he knocked out of the park in this version. He was amazing as Cyborg, and to think because of the way that he was treated by the studio and the way that Joss Whedon personally treated him on set, might keep him from future movies, is a tragedy, is an utter tragedy, and that's the reason why I can't give this movie a full 10 stars, is because it does leave us on a kind of a, I don't know, cliffhanger's not right. It leaves us on an ending that says there should be more, but then we don't know if there is. And that's if we knew definitively there was more, or if the movie would have ended with a definitive chunk, there could be no more and it'd be fine, I'd probably give it a 10 out of 10. That's my spiel. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually go down my little notes. Some of my notes are weird. I'm not going to show them to you because, well, it's kind of like shorthand. But there's a bunch of stuff I kind of want to note, and it'll get me to talk about things. One of the things that I really, really liked about how this movie was set up is the fact that it was in six acts and an epilogue. It gives us, I'm sure when it comes out on Blu-ray, that's going to be how the chapters are. There's going to be chapter breaks at all these acts. But they each act had a name, had a little blurb in it that kind of gave us an idea of how this next act is going to go, or at least a theme behind it. And it followed very well. It followed very well to those acts, and it gave the movie an even further theatrical feel, or almost like a stage feel, like a cinema, like Act 1 is done. Let's draw the curtain together. Let the people out into the concession stands to talk about what's going on, to discuss. Oh my God, did you see what I saw? That sort of thing. Grab some candy, grab a drink, and then come back in and then get into the next act and see how this progresses. Again, Zack's storytelling style is theatrical more so than cinematic, and it shows. It absolutely shows. It's fantastic. So there's that. But one of the things that I really liked about how this thing came together is, so of the five characters that Batman is bringing together, all of them, obviously himself included, everybody gets a short little kind of, not I don't know if that's not montage, but a short little vignette within this greater movie that not only shows the character who they are, shows off some of their powers, gives us better descriptions of some of their powers in some cases, but it also it shows what these characters are up to, what they're doing in a world without Superman. Because this takes place immediately after, well, Suicide Squad happens in the middle there, but like is the one of the first cinematic moments of the movie is Superman's death from PBS. And so then somewhere in between that moment and the actual beginning of this movie, Suicide Squad takes place. But we're not talking about Suicide Squad. We're talking about this movie. But like, yeah, you get Cyborg gets this amazing backstory that talks about not only that showing that he was a football star, but he already had kind of a troublemaking streak and helped. Didn't mind breaking the rules, but meant helping people out. That he was already really smart, and it showed a nice relationship with his mother. And then there is it shows his mother's death. It shows the car accident that tore Victor up, but also killed his mother. And the last thing that she says to him is such a poignant phrase. She's talking about how of course I'm going to be there. I love to see you play. Talking about his football game. But then she says, and I'm paraphrasing because I didn't write this one down, is that she can't wait to see what you're capable of tomorrow. And the fact that she gets in the car accident and that tomorrow, basically his dad is going to use the mother box to build him this cybernetic body, turn him into a completely different creature that's capable of almost anything. So it's such a poetic line of, I can't wait to see what you're capable of doing to what you're capable of tomorrow, because A, she's not going to see it, she's dead, but B, what he's capable of doing tomorrow is beyond comprehension. So it's a gorgeous moment. You get Wonder Woman doing her an extended version, an extended and changed version of the uh, terrorists that come into the museum that are going to blow up. They're going to blow up a bunch of city blocks, and in the theatrical cut, you don't really know what's going on. You just know that these guys are bad guys, and they've got guns, and they're going to hurt people, and they've got a bomb, and she comes in and saves the day. In this, you actually get a moment where the terrorists, caught by the lasso of truth, explain that they're just there to wreck. They're just there to cause problems, to set back the clock, to set England's clock back 1,000 years by blowing up 4 city blocks of London. And for me, what the sign for there is, not only is it, okay, I'm fighting against, techno nihilists, basically, like, they are against the modern now, so much so that they want to blow it up and send it back to the Stone Age, and they don't mind killing themselves in the process. But also, it shows that in a world without Superman, these kind of scumbags, these kind of nihilistic, uh, uh, you know, super terrorists that have no problem being like, well, in the Man of Steel era, or BVS era anyway, I expect things like this, terrorist cells like this, wouldn't rise to this kind of power because Superman was on watch. Now that he's not there, these guys had no problem walking into this museum, just shooting everybody, blasting everybody, just murdering people left and right to go set this bomb off. That would do even more because they know there's no Superman to stop them. So then Wonder Woman comes in and saves the day. But I during that fight, the actual cinematography was cool because it showed Wonder Woman, instead of slowing everything down Zack Snyder style, he did slow things down, but he also sped certain things up. The way that she blocked bullets, the way that she moved her hands, it was, you could see that she was moving at faster than normal human speed in order to do these things. And there is one particular moment where one of the terrorists opens up with like a full auto machine gun at a bunch of kids, and she starts blocking the bullets, and you can tell that one of the bullets, she's blocking as fast as she can, but even she can't get to all of them. And there's one that looks like it's heading towards the crowd, but she's still moving so fast she can kind of anticipate it. So instead of putting her, because she can't get out there to block it, what she does is moves the target away from where the thing hits. And that's a little tiny subtle thing that I like, that even though I can't block all these bullets, I'm still going to make sure that nobody gets hurt. And then she, cleans house and wrecks face. One of the things that is a big change from the Snyder's Justice League from the theatrical release, Steppenwolf. So Steppenwolf as a character in the theatrical cut looked kind of goofy. I mean, he still looked like an apocalyptian, and he still, had a big axe and killed a bunch of people and whatnot. But he had weird facial expressions. His CGI was very doughy, very doughy, gummy. This version of Steppenwolf is freaking badass. His axe is constantly like surging with lightning and charged from the inside, but he's covered, everything except for his face, in this like nanotech living scale metal armor. So like when he's in battle mode, it like closes up around his face a little bit, and like all of his point, like all of these scales like kind of shoot out and become like spikes around his person. But when he's just kind of chilling, it's all smooth and almost iridescent. Like it looks like they're like almost like an oil sheen when he moves. It's really really gorgeous. Whoever did the CGI for Steppenwolf's armor, that team needs champagne brunch at least. But then there's a time later on where he's basically prostrating himself in front of a hologram, a solid hologram of Darkseid, and his armor, this nanotech armor, scales completely away, so it's no longer covering his head, his neck, his shoulders, all the way down to like the middle of his arm. It's almost like the armor shows his deference to Darkseid. You know, like you could kill me at any moment, but my armor peels back because to show almost like a wolf showing his neck to another higher ranking wolf. Steppenwolf shows his his armor peels back and shows his I am vulnerable because I trust, and I'm here to be part of whatever you've got going on. Which also, just to even say, the conversations he has with Desaad and Darkseid through this mother box powered slab of metal that like kind of breaks apart into apocalyptian solid hologram conversation. That's super cool. If you remember in Man of Steel, the Kalex units, they were like the little floaty robots that had like the nanotech faces that could change and show things, or the nanotech. If you watched the director's cut of BVS and you saw where Lex sees Steppenwolf, and it's like all made out of like nanobites that come together and kind of form this image that he's seeing. The communication between Steppenwolf and Back to Apocalypse is through this kind of like fiery particulate matter. And it's a really neat effect. It's very very cool. But yeah, basically Steppenwolf, and even little things that made him not just, oh, I'm a big dude with horns and an axe. He's got like 7 fingers. It's like his hand has like an extra thumb on one side and like one more thumb on the other. So when it opens completely, it's almost like a paw. Like it's really long and it's got extra like dew claws on the side. It's really you can obviously tell that he's not just some humanoid monster. He's definitely another like mutated creature. You see any of the other apocalyptians like Darkseid or Desaad, and they don't have big horns or these extra like dew claw hands. They look more, I don't want to say more human-like, but more humanoid with regular hands that like regular fists and things. Just showing that maybe Steppenwolf has undergone some major changes to be a better warrior, or to maybe like these are things that surgeries and things that he can do to himself to make him tougher and more powerful. The scene, so there's the flashback scene where it basically explains what Darkseid does when he gets when the mother boxes come together to form the Unity, which is how they basically blast a planet into a version of Apocalypse, turn a bunch of people into parademons, expand his empire, so forth and so on. There's a really cool scene that shows the armies of men, the armies of Atlantis, and the armies of the Amazons, with the help of a Green Lantern and the old gods, Zeus, Ares, and Artemis, all fighting at once against Darkseid and his parademons. And it's a very cool it's a cool scene, because not only do you get a cool glimpse of a Green Lantern doing something. I'd love to have seen more, but you still get to see a little bit of it. You see just how powerful Darkseid is even before, this is 5,000 years ago, before he got the Omega power, before he it had conquered even, half of the worlds that he has for Apocalypse. It's a really cool thing, but it ends, of course, with, yeah, as we know, the three armies, the armies of men, Atlantis, and Themyscira. They take the three mother boxes and they say, we're going to hide them apart. We're going to send them to we're each going to hide and watch over our three spots. Well, I thought it was funny because it goes the the Atlanteans like kind of make this like coral box out of a kraken's secretions and whatever, and then they put it in this underwater temple that's being guarded by Atlantean guards and all this sort of thing. And then it shows the Themyscirans, and they use like this sun magic looking thing to create the box that holds the mother box, and then they put it inside this building that ends up being not only like a stone vault, but it's a stone vault that is triggered to fall into the sea if they lock the door and bury it under 1,000 kilotons of rubble. It's insane, but those are the lengths that they go to try and keep these away. And then we see a very cool like crucible being built to encase the human mother box. The mother box is being held by men. We see a very cool like there's like a molten furnace that's like a one shot deal, like a sand furnace where they wrap it in metal. They must have poured like molten steel or something over it to create this thing, and then it shows these guys with hammers breaking the crucible and it smashes it apart. And then they bury it in the woods. Mankind is so stupid at this point. We've got interdimensional matter changing engines of destruction. And the Atlanteans, they're going to hide it in the ocean. They're going to hide it in a temple at the bottom of the ocean. All right. The Themyscirians, they are going to put it on a mystical island that no one can find in a building that seals itself under part of the island when they're threatened. Humans are going to dig a 4-foot deep hole and drop it in it and cover it up and go, nah, no one will find it. It's so silly because humans are stupid. It's really what it comes down to. We get shortly after that we get we get to see Barry Allen, the Flash, which, by the way, they never call him the Flash in this, because as we know from extended canon, he doesn't get to know that his name is the Flash until he accidentally multiverse hops into the CW and meets the Barry Allen from the CW Flash, and he calls him the Flash, and he goes, Flash, and then runs away. So I'm hoping, honestly, what I'm hoping for is when we get the Flash movie and he starts having to do the multiverse hops to try and set things right, that we see him do the CW, that like we get a Grant Gustin cameo, or even if it's just they reuse that clip from the show where he goes to the CW version of himself, and then from there on out, when he comes out from there on out, he starts talking to himself, like basically calling himself the Flash, or maybe he tells Iris that in an alternate universe they call me the Flash, and she starts calling him the Flash in the newspapers or whatever. I don't know, but I think that'd be cool. But we get a really cool vignette of Barry showing that he cares about his dad. He's still trying to get on the in the criminal justice program to try and free his dad for the murder of his mother, which he did not commit. But we also see Barry showing up late for a job interview at a pet store as a dog walker, which, again, if you think about it, the Flash being a dog walker, super funny. But he's in there, and you see there's a truck that basically there's an accident that happens right outside, and he kicks on his speed force, he kicks on his super speed to save this woman who's going to get squished in this car. This woman who ends up being Iris West. And what I thought was so elegant Ooh, oh, we have a long time. And I'm talking a lot, so I'm not breathing a lot. Um, there's it is so elegant and something that so when he kicks on his speed force, you see him turn in place, but he turns in place so fast that his Converse, his shoes, they basically disintegrate. They fall apart. He rips out of his shoes when he turns in place to go save this woman. But what we see is when he's moving at this speed, unlike other versions of speed force, fast movement, super speed that we've seen, is where they can just do stuff at whatever they want. What we see is the Flash has to, or what Barry has to do, is that as things are moving through the air, instead of just grabbing it and moving it, he has to basically like kind of move it along its path that it's already taking. Like kind of he can sort of edge it through, and that includes Iris. She's like floating through the air because he's moving so fast, but he's like basically like kind of just barely touching her on her shoulder, turning her, moving her very gently, small motions, little like you can almost tell like he's kind of almost like tapping things to get them to just barely move because he's generating so much force from moving so fast. What we see later on when he chooses to push something, when he's moving fast, it goes flying. He pushes a parademon and it explodes against a wall. There's a moment where at super speed, I'll talk about that in a little bit, where he pushes against Superman. And although the force sends him flying through a wall, Superman still goes, "Urgh," like he still gets pushed back. So Barry can generate enough force to push Superman. So that's why when he's moving things, or like when he catches the batarang that Bruce throws at him, he just like kind of delicately, it's like, and he just goes, boom, and he just kind of pinches it. And it's not because he's afraid of cutting himself or anything like that. It's just because if he went to try and grab it, it's possible it could just blow up in his hand, just disintegrate. That's that much force that he's generating. Or worse, if he grabbed it, like touched it the wrong side, maybe it goes flying the other way and goes like through the wall. It's just it's so cool how he's moving things around and how he's just so gentle, just very gentle. And then he grabs a hot dog, but it's a different story. I'll say I don't want to give away all the things. In Cyborg's vignette, we learn that we are shown not only that he's super strong and super tough and his body will adapt to things, but we are told that he has connection to like all of the electronics of the world. The mother box gave him like universal access, and there's one particular scene that I think was so well done. It brought tears to my eyes. Is Cyborg in his own head in the electronic world, he goes in and sees money, just stacks and a universe of money, just giant stacks of money. And but at the bottom of all these stacks, there's little orange like screens, like little floating screens. And he goes up to one, and it is the screen that belongs to a Gotham mother, a Gotham single mother, one would assume. And there's on top of this screen, there's just a tiny little stack of cash and some pocket change. And if you read the screen, it says her account worth is like $11.98. And he's watching this screen. Cyborg's watching the screen, and he sees that she works super hard. She's got 2 kids, and he sees her getting evicted because she can't pay her bills and like crying in the hallway. And so what he does, it shows him basically while the narration from his father is saying that you need to you have all these powers, you could launch every nuclear weapon in the world with a thought, but it's up to you to not use them. It's up to you. It isn't the how do I use them, it is how don't I use them. That's the important question. And so what he does is he's looking at this little stack of money, and you see him kind of put his hands over it and goes and turns into this giant stack of money. And then in the real world, he's watching this woman go to an ATM and go to like take out her last, her kids are with her, and it's raining, and it's that whole thing of, okay, let's get something to eat for the last $10 in my account. And it jumps up to $100,000, and it says that you've won the rare $100,000 Gotham City Bank award. Yay. So it shows that Cyborg has this ability, has this power, and he can do this. In this case, he did this to help this woman. But the scene with all of the money stacks, it was a little thing that got me, and I pointed it out to my wife, and she was like, oh wow, is in the background all these different piles and stacks, and just hundreds of them of different sizes with all kinds of different name tags and everything. Basically, a visual representation of the money of the world. It shows money flipping from pile to different piles to that pile, from this pile, like going back and forth, almost like flying memos. And once I saw that, it occurred to me, it's not windy inside his representation. What it is that's the physical representation of these accounts paying each other, of this money giving money to this money giving to this. Like what he's seeing in the background is commerce. And it just blew me away. I was like, that's a physical representation of commerce, and I love it. A visual representation. It was amazing. We see, we get a little bit more Mara, which I think is a good thing. We see her defend the Atlantean Mother Box from Steppenwolf, and there is one particular moment that is easily there. It took me a second to go, oh, that's cool, and then it went from, oh, that's cool, to, oh, that's amazing. Is he eventually Steppenwolf pins her up against a wall, and he's like, you should have, you can't escape. And she says, I'm not trying to. She was just trying to get him close, because then she basically opens up her hand and starts pulling the water out of Steppenwolf. And at first it's just like pulling out just water, but then that water that she's pulling out of him starts to turn to blood. She's starting to not only pull the water out of him, she's pulling the blood out of this guy, out of his face. And as soon as that starts to happen, obviously it must hurt, because he's like, "Rah!" And he throws her down, and then the tide gets turned, no pun intended. But it's so cool to see her magic. Her hydrokinesis is pretty amazing. If she can take, like with a flick of her wrist, almost yank all of the out of an apocalyptian general. It's amazing. We move forward, and eventually they decide that they've got this third mother box. They've got the man mother box, and there's a scene where they're standing around it, and Cyborg basically explains to them that these boxes, they don't destroy, they just basically alter. They turn things from one matter to the next, from energy back to matter, from matter to energy, and so forth and so on, down to even like recreating that which has been destroyed. And there's a great analogy where they talk about how anybody with a match can burn a house, or can turn a house to smoke. Well, this mother box can actually turn the smoke back into a house. And while they're standing there, they kind of collectively come to the decision. They're like, so this thing could possibly bring back anything from destruction. And Barry's actually the one that goes, hey, we're all thinking it. I could say it, but I don't want to. And then Cyborg actually projects an image of Superman kind of jumping up off of the mother box, and it's a cool. I like that version of them coming to the consensus together that this is something the mother box can do, and something that they should do, and then maybe have second thoughts later. But like, I love the fact that it's not just Batman going, no, I'm going to bring him back. I'm going to bring him back using the ship and using the mother box. I'm going to do it. It was a collective. We're all thinking it. We need Superman, and we could maybe do it. And then later on, they have their second thoughts on the ship. There's a fantastic, the ship basically says, because apparently Kryptonians and Apocalyptians have clashed before, because the ship says Kryptonian and Apocalyptian technology do not mix well. This is not going to go well, and it shows Cyborg a possible future. It shows him basically the beginnings of the nightmare future that is in BVS, and later on you get to see a little bit more of it. But it basically shows Cyborg, hey, this is something that could happen if you do this. And he pulls away from the console and says no. He actually is like, oh God, no. And it's at that moment that Barry, all the way at the other end of the ship, getting ready to do the big running charge, he says, go? As in, I heard him say go, and so that's what starts. And obviously, once he starts in the super speed, no one's gonna be able to interrupt him. No one's gonna be like, oh, don't do this. So that's why it happens. It's also, there's a very cool thing that he explains, that when he is close to reaching the speed of light, time gets a little weird. He doesn't get specific. He doesn't get like, oh, it reverses, or he just says time gets a little strange, or time acts funny, and we get to see that because he's running. The closer he gets, the time of the mother box landing in the Kryptonian ship goo, it slows down, and then it kind of picks back up just slightly. So like he's starting to go so fast that he's starting to back up time just a little bit. And then he discharges his the energy, and Superman comes back and blasts off. And you already know that already happens. But it's one of those things where that's a poignant moment. The fact that the Flash, or that Barry knows that he can mess with time. That he knows that he can run fast enough that he can mess with time, which has some foreshadowing later on, where something horrible happens, and he's like, I'm going to break my own rules, and I'm going to run faster than light. And he does that in order so he can back up time, back up a clock, and do something that he needed to do at the right time, so forth and so on. But the Superman fight, when Superman comes back from the dead, he comes back kind of confused. He goes to his own kind of memorial, and there's a very, even the theatrical had a very cool scene where the rest of the Justice League basically shows up and has to try and sort of smack Superman around to snap out of it, come to, let's do this. And Cyborg's body tries to protect itself around the Kryptonian, starting this fight. And it shows just how powerful Superman is compared to the rest of the team. Like, he is just fighting everybody off. And then one of my favorite moments of any comic book movie, even the theatrical cut, was the Flash comes running in to help. And while he's running in at super speed, there's a moment where he's running like he always does, and Superman looks over at him. And in the theatrical cut, all he did was look at him and basically shrug everybody off and take one swing at him at super speed. And it causes Barry to be like, oh my God, someone's moving as fast as me. Blah, 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 and he crashes and he knocks himself out. In this, they actually tussle. It shows Superman moving slightly slower than Barry, but still fast enough that he's moving and punching in the Speed Force, trying to lay a hand on him. And that's when we see Barry push, like full on push against Supes, knocking himself out, but also knocking Superman back a couple of feet. And that's just like, we've seen him take punches from veritable alien gods and catch it, and like Barry's able to push him. It's rad. We also get a much better interaction with Batman. Batman's late to the show because he doesn't have superpowers, but then when he gets here, Kal-El just wants to burn him to the ground. Um, and then we have a very, very, very good reason for Lois Lane being there. Theatrical cut, they just sort of added in a bring her in, Alfred. Like we're just gonna have Lois on standby for whatever reason. In this instance, Lois always came to the memorial anyway, every day, and so there's a scene where Martha Kent comes to Lois and basically tells her that it's time for you to get back into reality. It's time for you to live your life again. Get, quit being cooped up in this house. Quit mourning Clark, or rather mourn Clark in a different way. It's time for you to be, a part of society again. And then when Martha leaves, it ends up being the Martian Manhunter, which is an unexpected and very cool cameo. Um, Effectively showing that the Martian Manhunter knows, like, the thought process is already there. Maybe he's super telepathic and he already knows. He knows that. I mean, hell, for all we know, he might know that Superman. Like he may have mentally telepathy known that Superman was going to wake up, or whatever. We have no idea how that happened, but he basically goaded Lois into getting out and starting. Be adventurous, get out there, live your life. It's what Clark would have wanted, but in doing that, it made sure that she was going to be at the memorial, like storyline wise, she was at the memorial to come out and save the day and keep Superman from killing everybody. Um, there is a moment where they're talking about how to stop the Unity, how to stop the mother boxes, or how to get into the base to stop Steppenwolf from getting the mother boxes together for the Unity. And it cracks me up both times. I cracked up. They're basically like, all right, so you got to take down this tower, and when the tower comes down, it's going to bring the shield down, and when you bring the shield down, I'm going to, Cyborg's like, I'm going to need to separate the Unity, separate the mother boxes. And someone asked, I think it's Aquaman. I think Aquaman goes, well, how are you gonna how are you going to separate the boxes? How are you going to undo the Unity? And Barry, without skipping a beat, goes, the power of love, duh. And Cyborg snaps at him like, Barry, and Barry corrects himself. He's like, a giant, a giant explosion of condensed energy or whatever. Like basically the real thing. But I just the power of love cracks me up because it's that whole thing of, you know, in other movies that has actually been like in the first Wonder Woman movie, like the power of love is what brought her around. Her love of humanity is what brought her around to be able to stop Ares. So I think it's hilarious that Barry makes a wise ass comment about how we're going to use love to stop them. No, we're not. We're going to use a nearly thermonuclear charge of energy from me moving almost at the speed of light. So it's fantastic. Is unbelievably great. There's a couple of scenes there's a couple of Superman scenes that are just brilliant. Because although he's not in the movie a ton, because again, part of the movie is getting around to the idea of bringing him back. But when he has decided to don the warrior, the black and silver of the warrior Kryptonians. If you remember back in Man of Steel, he wore that blue and red because that was like, this was the symbol of hope. This is, it was almost like just kind of a uniform of office. This is what I'm going to do. But all of Zod's warriors, including his own suit, they were all blacks and grays and silvers. So like this version of Superman coming back from the dead, going to the ship, and he chooses to put on the black and silver of his house, shows that this is like the warrior Superman. This is, okay, when I wear the blue and red, I'm out saving the day. I'm just being a hero. I'm saving people. I'm stopping crime. But I'm putting this on because I need to. I'm they brought me back to fight a war effectively. And so he puts on that warrior suit, and I love it, love it, love it, love it. But after he puts it on, he's out there doing the whole getting ready to fly and go do his thing. And there's a really cool moment where he's hearing the words of his fathers. He's hearing the advice that his fathers gave him, both Jonathan and Jor-El. And it's basically the back and forth. The fathers are giving him their speeches back and forth until eventually he's getting ready to fly away, and both of them, like both voices, say it's time to go, and he takes off, and it's so good. Which then he shows up in the Steppenwolf fight for one of the single most amazing Superman moments ever. So Steppenwolf is getting, and I don't want to spoil it, but I gotta say, basically, there's a reason why the mother boxes were afraid of a Kryptonian being on Earth, and why Steppenwolf doesn't, or why Darkseid and Steppenwolf didn't come back to Earth while there was a Kryptonian here. And what I'm going to say is Steppenwolf basically goes to do something very devastating for the whole plot, and Superman almost nonchalantly stops it and says, "Not impressed," and then goes to continue fighting, Steppenwolf, and it's brutal. It's amazing. There is some snafooing. There's some problems, obviously, that happens because otherwise the movie would end perfectly. And there is a time where Barry has to, the foreshadowing from earlier where he says, when I push myself close to going to the speed of light, time gets wonky. Well, there's a moment where he has the decision that he goes, I have to move, not close to the speed of light. I need to break my own rules, and I need to move faster than the speed of light. And while he's doing so, while he's basically setting back the clock to make things right, which I'm sure is going to be a reason why he thinks he can do it in the Flash movie, why he can create the Flashpoint universes and stuff, and why he does the universe hopping, is because he thinks that he can, and it's going to be okay. But he has this really cool monologue where basically he's telling nobody, he's sort of telling the universe that, his dad's gonna, he all he ever wanted to do is make his dad proud, and that his dad, he wants his dad to know that his son Barry was here. His son Barry did something for everyone. And the line that gets me is that he wants, and I'm gonna cry because I'm a dad, and this is the kind of thing that, like, I'm a dad, and I'm also a kid with a dad who, I did not spend a whole lot of time with, that, like, it gets me. And he says, Barry basically is like having this kind of inner monologue, because as far as he knows, he has no idea what's going to happen. He's moving faster than he's ever moved before. For all he knows, it might collapse and everyone dies anyway. But he's having this monologue, and he says, he's like, I just wanted my dad to know that I did something, that your son did something, that Barry did something, that Barry was one of the best of the best. And I love that line, because it's basically him going, I'm part of this team of superheroes trying to save the world, and I was chosen by the damn Batman of all things. I was chosen to be a part of the team that saves the world, and I want my dad to know that right before I possibly just die. It's amazing. It's fantastic, and I love it. The Superman shows up and he's got the black suit on. In the end, when we basically get to see that Cyborg has come to terms with what he is, Batman's back to solving crime in Gotham. There's using the bat signal again. Wonder Woman is looking longingly for Themyscira, holding the Artemis arrow. And we see Superman, or rather Clark Kent, walking down the street, and you hear like a distant explosion, and he runs down an alley, and you get the classic dun dun dun, where he pulls his shirt apart to show the Superman symbol. I was a little disappointed that he was still wearing the black and silver. Um, and I know the black and silver is really cool and iconic. The post I've been killed and now I'm the kind of the warrior Superman. But I would have liked to maybe see him go back into the blue and red. Um, Now that he's back to, you know, the black, back to the Clark Kent alter ego, back to the regular Superman we see and that we know and love. It would have been kind of cool to just show that he went back to that. And then we see Batman looking out over the bat for the bat signal, and he is in this. So I'm gonna say this. He is in this ludicrously big tank. He's standing on the front of the tank. This is like so stupidly huge. Like this kind of tank isn't even the kind of thing that you would see in actual war, let alone a vigilante who's cleaning up Gotham streets. It's silly. It is so big and so dumb. Like that is actually one of the, I will say that I was like that was a silly big tank. I would give him another Batmobile. Hell, give him a Bat tank, but don't make it the size of a small Walmart. Come on now, come on. Um, and then we get this very strange. It's very sudden, where we get a scene in the Nightmare universe that we saw a little bit in BBS, where basically an alternate dimension Barry comes in and is like shows Batman, hey, this is something that can happen. We get another one of those. We get another one of those dreams, except we don't have any lead into it. There's no seeing Batman sleeping. There's no lead in at all. It's just screen goes black, comes back up, and we're in Nightmare World. And then we get to see some cool stuff. We get some fantastic Batman and Joker, Jared Leto's Joker, back and forth. Some awesome just dialogue between the two of them and showing the Joker just how nasty he is, and that he alludes to the fact that he obviously killed Jason Todd, which we know that's probably the reason why he's got the grill in his mouth, because Batman beat the teeth out of him. Um, it's really good. It's really good. Just the kind of the nightmare versions of everybody, as a carryover from potentially something bad happens. We assume Lois dies. And Superman loses his shit, and basically gives in to Darkseid and becomes like Darkseid's right hand man, because he's got nothing left to live for, or whatever, or blames Batman, or whatever. Almost like a very Injustice style world that you're looking at. And it lasts for a few minutes. They talk, whatever, and then Superman shows up. Except he's in the blue and red, in this nightmare world, and he's getting ready to obviously kick a whole bunch of butt. And then suddenly, Bruce wakes up in his bed. So that was all a dream, but it's not a dream, because we got to see the Flash that came out in BVS to show him the nightmare world and tell him that Lois was the key. There's a lot of weirdness there to unpack, and I think if that is actually, if there's something that annoyed me about that scene, is that there was no intro, like none, and waking up from it, he was okay with it like that, just like wake up, ooh, and then gets up out of bed. Whereas if this was a continuation of a possible apocalyptic future, and I was seeing it in my brain, I would probably have a bigger moment of recollection. And then, of course, we get to see one last cool cameo, that I was hoping was going to be a Green Lantern, but it was not. We get a cool cameo at the very end, and then credits, and the before the credits we actually get that this whole thing was for Autumn Snyder, like I mentioned in the intro. And then you get the credits, and it plays Autumn's favorite song, which is the Hallelujah. And then that's it. And then you've watched 4 hours of amazing stuff, and you really, really, if you're anything like me, you really, really hope that it continues, and that we get more. Because that's what we want. We want more. We want the Snyder, that we want DCEU to mesh with Snyder's version, because it definitely didn't with the Justice, the theatrical release. And honestly, if I'm going to be honest, I would love to see the Ayer cut. I would love to see the cut that we were told that had more Joker in it, that had instead of the giant incubus, that we had, that the machine, basically the thing that Enchantress was trying to wake up as one of the mother boxes, which we know are already waking up because Superman at this point died. So his shockwaves sent everything at, and then the bad guy that the Suicide Squad's supposed to fight to a standstill, pushing him back into a mother box, or back into a boom tube, is Steppenwolf. We're supposed to see like basically the beginnings of Steppenwolf, which would play into why Steppenwolf failed Darkseid, why he's already failed him once. And that's because he was supposed to get the mother box, or he was supposed to get things started first, and it didn't happen, and he got pushed back into the boom tube, and then Desaad and Darkseid have already kick him out and say, you owe me 50,000 planets before you're ever allowed back in my court, which is what we see in this one. But so that's honestly, that's what we got to hope for. We got to hope that that maybe the guys at Warner, they've already tweeted that big things are afoot, and that, you know, the what was it, the pre selected download or pre-selected streams of this movie have already broken records. It's insane. And they're talking about a physical Blu-ray coming out in May. Guess what? I'm gonna be buying a copy there. But yeah, it's just it's epic. It's amazing. It's unbelievable. And for anybody who says that, you know, 4 hours is too long of a movie, keep in mind it is split up into acts. You could stop and go do something else, come back to it in the future. It's up to you. And for all of the Marvel people out there, the super Marvel stands that are like, you know, they should have done it like Marvel. You know, this 4 hour movie is insane. The Infinity War movies, part 1 and part 2, basically one giant movie that they split into halves. It's 5.5 hours long. Keep that in mind. So it's an hour and a half longer than the Snyder's version of Justice League. So remember that it is all about how you digest it and how much fun you're having. Sometimes a 3 hour movie doesn't even feel like it's that long. It just you sit down and suddenly you look at your watch and you're like, oh, I guess I've been here forever. I don't know. So, I guess, you know, this is a longer than normal, but my review, in a nutshell, is this is the DCEU connectivity, the connective tissue that we wanted. This is the Justice League movie that we wanted initially. Yeah, there's a couple of things that we would love to see different, or that I would love to see different. A couple of things I'd love to see changed or added to. But overall, this was a masterpiece. It was amazing, and even if you just get HBO Max for, you know, anime on Crunchyroll and a couple of, you know, HBO series, make sure, if you get HBO Max, or if you have access to HBO Max, or hell, subscribe to HBO Max, in order, not a sponsor, in order to get access to this movie. It is unbelievable, and the fact that Zack did not take the salary that he chose as part of his bargaining chip, is that he himself was not being paid. This was not a greed move. His salary got sent to suicide prevention. That he literally was doing this because he wanted to finish his dream. He wanted to make the loss of his daughter and the memory of that situation have a good ending. Have a not a happy ending, because, you know, your daughter's still has still passed away under tragic circumstances, but at least now he has something that he can basically say, I did something amazing in her honor because I couldn't finish it because of the tragedy of her loss. So, I know this is a weird episode because I did a movie review. I never do that. Maybe I should do more of those. Let me know in the comments. Either way, like, share, subscribe. Please comment. I cannot wait to talk to you guys more. Hell, maybe have me do more movie. If you like movie reviews, I'll do more of them. Well, who knows? But do me a favor. Go out there, be safe, get vaccinated as soon as you can. Wear a mask while you're out in public, and above all things, have fun. And do me a favor, play some games. See you later.